Well, let's get more on this now. We're joined by Professor Kamal Hawash, who is a Palestinian academic and analyst who joins us from the United Kingdom. Professor Hawash, always a pleasure having you on the programme. Israel saying there's been unlawful land registration in areas controlled by the Palestinian authorities across the West Bank. What's Israel therefore trying to achieve with the announcement of these new measures?
Well, this is occupied Palestinian land, so there can be no unlawful registration by Palestinians or the Palestinian Authority. The whole point is that Israel and the settlers should be leaving the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Gaza, and working with the Palestinians to create a Palestinian state if we are able to get peace. This means that Israel, as it has announced, has no intention of allowing a Palestinian state to exist in these areas. It is hell-bent on land theft and expanding, not incidentally only in the West Bank, but also into Syria, Lebanon, and other areas to achieve what is called Greater Israel.
Right, and we understand these measures will make it easier for settlers to buy land in the West Bank, but it raises a lot of important questions. I mean, from whom would they be buying the land?
Well, first of all, even in East Jerusalem, there have unfortunately been some Palestinians who have sold land to particularly settlers who are supported from the United States with millions of dollars or pounds. I'm not suggesting at all that Palestinians will sell them land, but as Israel makes life so impossible for Palestinians, particularly in Area C, moving them out. They go into areas A and B. They find that they're being pushed out of the areas they've gone to. So they might think that why don't they sell up and leave to a safer place? That's what Israel is banking on. But I don't think the Palestinians will allow that to happen. So the whole point is about expanding the illegal hold on land that the Palestinians own and have for tens, if not hundreds of years, in favor of settlers who have been heaping terrorism on the Palestinians in their villages over the last couple of years and longer.
Right, and it remains to be seen how popular these measures are in Israel, because there is, of course, opposition in Israel to such moves. There is an Israeli anti-settlement watchdog called Peace Now. They called these new measures, quote, a mega land grab. I mean, some are calling this annexation of the West Bank in all but name. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think so. And yes, there are groups like Peace Now that speak, but it is important to note that nearly 80% of Israelis want the Palestinians expelled. So these people, with all good intention, do not represent the Israelis. We used to say we must separate the Israeli government from the Israeli people, but it's becoming increasingly difficult. When you hear a figure like that, when you see that once the Israeli prisoners were released, the protests have stopped, because they were not protests for peace with the Palestinian people. They were always protests for Israel and its interests, putting that over and above the Palestinian interests. When in reality, there can only be peace if the Israelis accept that the Palestinians must have equal rights, must have the ability to be free, and to ensure that their children grow up in the same way as children grow up in other places, and not fear being shot when they went to school, or as happens in Gaza, that quadcopters are up there shooting, including on children.
And Professor, I mean, when you hear about what was announced on Sunday by the Israelis, these new measures that some are calling a land grab, I mean, are we witnessing, do you think, does it look to you like the beginning of the total collapse of the two-state solution?
Well, Israel says there won't be a two-state solution. And the countries, including where I am, the United Kingdom, which recognize the Palestinian state, and France and Saudi Arabia, who were pushing for the two-state solution, what have they done to make it happen on the ground? Nothing whatsoever. So, for example, now that Britain has recognized Palestine as a state, why hasn't the Palestinian consulate in East Jerusalem been upgraded to the embassy of Britain in Palestine, which is what should happen? Because with every other country, the United Kingdom, that the United Kingdom recognizes as a state, there is an embassy, and there should be an ambassador to Palestine going there. This is what would begin to put pressure on Israel to say there will be two states. One of them will be Palestine. There will be embassies for Palestine. East Jerusalem is occupied territory, and you must leave that and leave the West Bank, and indeed the Golan Heights, which Israel has annexed. So without this fundamental shift towards what would bring peace, Israel thinks it can win by making the lives of the Palestinians so hard that they would leave. But they've seen, if they have any nous, the Palestinians returning to Gaza, saying to their brothers and sisters, do not leave. Wherever you go, you will be treated like second-class citizens. Stay here and let's fight for reconstruction and for a normal life.
I mean, in the UK, obviously there is strong support for Ukraine, where attempted annexation was the cause of great upset and considerable action on the part of the government. I mean, if annexation of Ukraine is considered illegal, there must be people in the UK who are saying, why doesn't that same logic apply directly to what's happening in the West Bank? Is that something you're hearing?
Yes, absolutely. And those who've been out on the protests in London and other places, and I estimate that only those who went on protests in London, there have been 30 million people that have been on the 34 marches in London and protests. And apart from others around the country, they all, wanted a ceasefire. They wanted an end to the occupation. They want the Palestinians to have their rights. The British government finally moved towards the issue of recognition. But why is it that there are no sanctions on Israel when we saw only recently the health secretary, Wes Streeting, had privately been messaging to other people saying Israel is committing war crimes, but when it comes to public positions, they don't say anything like that. Keir Starmer, the prime minister, has refused to call what Israel does in Gaza a genocide. There is, unfortunately, we have a strong pro-Israel lobby here in the United Kingdom, and it isn't just a Jewish lobby. There are Christians who are very supportive of Israel. So there are Zionists in the UK, including in very high places, who are saying that Israel, can go back to being treated as normal. It should continue to be isolated until it stops doing what it's doing. It is the 21st century's most criminal state, and it should be treated like that. Yes, there are lots of people who think that is what should be happening, but the government isn't moving fast enough on that.
Yeah, and the UN isn't doing very much either. I mean, the UN looks extremely weak at the moment. It's entirely cash-strapped, and there are people in the UN saying the UN is on the brink of collapse, and all we've had from the UN is words to the effect that this is destabilizing for the region or something along those lines. I mean, beyond words, does the UN have any leverage here?
I mean, let's not forget that the UN acts in terms of its members. Yes, they come together in different fora, like the Security Council. But even if they want to have peacekeeping troops, if countries don't send troops to be peacekeepers, there won't be peacekeeping troops. But the reality that we have and we must face is that Israel has a veto almost of its own on the Security Council called the United States veto. So it is America that is hampering efforts to bring peace anywhere, including in Ukraine, but particularly in Palestine. And what they have done with the creation with this so-called Peace Council, which I call the Council for Liquidating the Palestinian Cause, because they've got Netanyahu and Trump in it. Now, this group, and particularly Trump, who wants to be the chair, the president forever, even after he stops being president, what they are trying to do is to replace the UN. UN. And what Mark Rubio said, I think it was yesterday in Geneva, was effectively that the UN is useless. It's only useless because you, America, do not play your part to make sure that it acts not only with words and with resolutions, but that there are forces that go to enforce decisions under Chapter 7. But there's been no such thing when it comes to Palestine, and particularly in Gaza. It is a case of supporting Israel to do whatever it wants. Let's face it, this council was formed, a ceasefire was declared, and since then, Israel has killed more than 500 people. It has breached it more than 1,000 times. And the reason it does and it can is the United States. It's nothing to do with the UN, nothing to do with the Arab members and Turkey in this council. It is Israel feeling that it can do whatever it likes because it will not be brought to account by the United States and therefore by anyone.
Okay, Professor, just picking up on what you were saying about the Board of Peace, and then we'll come back to the West Bank. But it's been announced that the Board of Peace has pledged $5 billion towards the rebuilding of Gaza, and that'll obviously help with bringing about stabilization, reconstruction, even a police force for the territory. I mean, surely that's something you'd welcome.
I think the Palestinians would welcome having temporary housing brought in, being able to eat when it comes to the month of Ramadan, where they can't have an iftar. That, as you know, where you are, that Ramadan is celebrated greatly with a big feast at the breaking of the fast. People visit each other, buy them presents. Israel is denying them that. And this Board of Peace, so-called, is not pushing to help achieve that. It has not criticized Israel once for its breaches or for it not allowing the aid. There should be 600, 700 trucks going in every day. I am told there are fewer than 200 going in every day. The point isn't just stability. The people of Gaza need help desperately, now, today, not tomorrow. At the very least, they should have medical supplies, they should have food, clean water, electricity should be beginning to come back. Let's not forget, they haven't had electricity for 2.5 years. Who would be able to live like that in the 21st century? If I was in London the other day in a restaurant and the power was cut and people couldn't eat for 10 minutes. This is what we're talking about. So the first thing is the humanitarian situation must be not just improved, it must be brought back to normal. Yes, it will take a bit of time, but we need to see signs that this so-called Board of Peace is pushing Israel. What we hear is more demands from Netanyahu, more refusal to allow things to move on unless Hamas disarms. Then he says they don't have any heavy arms, says they have Kalashnikovs that stop the rebuilding. What the heck? That should not stop the rebuilding. They cannot hit a settlement from with a Kalashnikov in Rafah.
Okay, I mean, let's go back to the situation in the West Bank and these announcements by the Israelis, which have been broadly condemned, including by a number of regional powers here in the Gulf. And I'm wondering how you think these measures will sit with President Trump, because surely no country in this region, no other country in this region, is going to sign up to the Abraham Accords in this particular context. Therefore, President Trump, by default, as you'd have thought, would find these new measures offensive, wouldn't he?
Well, I go further and I say the countries that have signed the Abraham Accords should be threatening Israel that they will come out of them if it continues to treat the Palestinians the way it does. And that's what they should be saying to Donald Trump. We signed the Abraham Accords. Take, for example, the United Arab Emirates. I remind the viewers that the UAE said when it signed the accords, we signed them because Israel has promised not to annex the West Bank. So I am not alleging anything. This is what the Emirates said when that happened. And you would have thought it has threatened that annexation is a red line. But what does annexation mean? If it is just for an announcement to say we now annex the West Bank to Israel, then that is one thing. But the reality is on the ground, ground with new settlements, with these new laws that they are passing, they are effectively annexing the West Bank. So I would have thought that countries like the UAE, who signed the accords on the condition that Israel will not annex the West Bank, should be looking again at that agreement and saying to Trump and Israel, we cannot possibly continue with this if Israel continues with this annexation. And that also means that Saudi Arabia, which would be a prize for Israel, has made it clear it will not sign the Abraham Accord unless a Palestinian state emerged. And so that's where the push should be. How do we get to peace? Not to the Abraham Accords and more who signed them, but peace can only come when the Palestinians have their rights, not only in the West Bank, in Gaza, in East Jerusalem, and that Palestinian citizens of Israel should be treated equally within the borders of Israel, and that there should be a big effort on the part of the police to tackle crime that is killing lots of Palestinian Israelis inside Israel.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time, but really appreciate you speaking to us and sharing your thoughts. Professor Kamal Hawash, thank you very much indeed, sir.
Thank you for having me.